Oh, hey, I'm Emily, and this is my best friend Rachel.
Hey, I'm Rachel, and in 2010, aged 18 and fresh out of secondary school,
we went on a gap year, travelling to 5 countries in 5 months.
Shockingly, it didn't always go so well. We lost passports,
Ran out of money,
jumped out of aeroplanes,
and landed ourselves in endless ridiculous scenarios.
but what we also managed to do is write a blog about our experiences.
And without smartphones or Instagram at our disposal, this blog is the only record we have of the trip of our young lives.
And 11 years on, we're reliving it all by reading back over our diary entries for your listening pleasure.
Welcome to the Gap Year Diaries podcast.
Hey!
Oh, great. Good start. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Hi. Good. How are you? How are you, listeners?
How
As
are
if they're
you
going to
doing?
respond.
Like a long voice note.
Yeah, I'm doing good. How has your week been, Rach?
Yeah,
last
no,
we spoke.
it's been good. It's been good. But before I go into that, welcome to episode 4, guys. Episode 4. Can't wait to get started. But before, we'll just see how Emily's week's been. Emily, how's your week been?
Please tell us how your weeks have been. Forcing that in. Yeah, my week's been pretty chill. Obviously, like, pubs and stuff have reopened here fairly recently, like within the last few weeks. But it's still only outside socialising. So, and the weather just like is a sort of classic British like little prank that the weather likes to play on us, has been just Baltically cold for absolutely no reason, even though it's like firmly in May now. So you go for your little like social interactions, and then after an hour you're like, how much do I want to speak to this person versus how cold am I? Like, obviously I always choose speaking to the person, but my feet just get like, it's ridiculous. It's like you're at bloody bonfire night. But anyway, it's really nice, of course, to be able to see people. But a real highlight of my week has been that I've been to the garden centre again.
Oh my goodness.
Which I think is
honestly,
the third time
Emily's
since I've
place
moved here.
is basically like a mini jungle inside. It's more
Essentially-
outside than inside.
Essentially, I'm a incredible millennial cliche, and I have like more plants than is actually sensible amount to have. Watering day is just, it's beginning to get too much for me, to be honest.
Don't you like put them in a bath as well?
I put them in the bath. I think I'm bordering on insanity, but yeah, like, because some of them like to be watered upwards, Rachel. I do sometimes think about my plants, like, if I wasn't here, you'd be living in the wild, and then what would you do? Like, you have such a cushy life here, like, you have absolutely no excuse not to just look absolutely resplendent. So when some of them are a bit droopy, I'm like, for God's sake, what more do you need? Very dramatic. But anyway, enough about
needy
that.
children.
Needy little plant children I have. How on earth are you? Tell me about you.
Well, I've had 5 hours in hospital today. I'm
gosh.
fine. I'm absolutely fine. I just had an MRI scan, which I went in. Dr. Wallop. I love that name.
Can't help
Dr.
but laugh at that.
Said, yeah, you can have an MRI scan. I've just sort of injured a tendon on my leg trying to do the splits for my weird hobby of aerial hoop. Yeah, no, it kind of broke it a bit. I've had the MRI scan. They laid me down. I went into a tunnel, and you just have to stay very, very still while all these sirens and chilling alarms are going off. And it's an oxymoronic like feel where you're stuck in this chamber of frightening sounds and you cannot move. But, you know, did it.
Sounds absolutely harrowing.
It is
Thank
a little
you so
bit,
much
yeah.
for finding it within yourself to record the podcast after that experience.
Hospitals podcast, all in a day's work. I should be fine. Thankfully, it's not joints or bones. Just sharing it to the world.
Please tell us.
But I should be better soon. So
I'm
all
really
good.
glad, and I also love the sort of incredibly glamorous way that you got that injury, like trying to do the splits with aerial hoop. Like, I feel like if I injured a tendon, it would be like reaching for another donut or something.
Watering a plant.
Watering a plant too vigorously. But yes, good. I'm glad that you're all okay despite your MRI experience.
No, I'm all good. Cheers.
Cool. Okay. Well, to recap on last week, for all that listened in, last week we arrived in Gandoka. It was quite an arrival. We managed to navigate our way to the coast using a series of kindly local men, who just, stepped in and saved us at really quite alarmingly frequent intervals. We managed to get there, and when we got there, we were greeted with the news that no one was expecting us, so we were feeling nice and awkward and out of place.
A warm welcome.
A warm welcome. To be fair, they did do their absolute best to welcome us despite having no idea of who we were. They found us a bed in someone else's shed, which was kind, and we received our turtle saving training, had our first night patrol, and started the long process of making friends with our fellow volunteers, and also the staff, who were a mix of international staff members and also local people who lived in the nearby village that also worked there. So we met a whole host of them, and tried our best to ingratiate ourselves.
They were an absolute team as well. They were,
oh my God,
they were
fantastic.
Lovely. Fantastic group of people.
Absolute top-notch peeps. But yeah, we, Rachel and I very much felt the outliers as we were incredibly useless and just sort of like creeping around like, hello. But yeah, it was great. And we also learnt what it was like to be woken up by howler monkeys. I won't do the impression again because I feel like we had more than enough of it last week. But yeah, so that was where we were. And so we begin today's blog, obviously still in the jungle, in our little sandy little beds full of sand,
sandy wee beds
that we sandy wee beds. Rachel's with an incredibly plush pillow, obviously shout out to that pillow.
Two beds, one pillow.
Two beds, one pillow. What a YouTube vid that would be. Anyway, that's for a different sort of genre of podcast. But I love it. Cool. Okay, so this week, Rachel, you're reading first. I don't know if that's news to you.
And just want to remind the listeners that this is written in Emily's perspective. So anytime you hear phrases such as Rach and I, this is from Emily, but I'm reading the voice. So as confusing as possible.
We really try and make it work as a format.
Written by Emily. The morning after the first patrol saw Rach and I jolted violently awake by the sound of about 6,000 howler monkeys. And again, Emily's extreme writing style coming up. Screaming at each other after very little sleep, feeling rank, skank and damp, and highly entangled in our voluminous mosquito nets. The first words I heard from Rach that morning were a detailed recount of the many dreams of pure insanity that would plague her Gandoka nights for the full 10 days. Poor Emily, I'm sorry you had to deal with so many dream recounts. The details of this dream I cannot recall, but I do remember that they terrified me to my innermost core. And you never asked for them. You just got this morning report all the time.
It was literally like not an alarm clock as such, but it was like I would just blink into the day and just be like, oh yes, another day at the beach. And then Rachel would be like, Emily, oh my God. Like you would literally just like sort of pop like your head down from the top bunk, like upside down, like, it's another terrifying dream. And they almost always, like invariably involved me dying in some sort of horrific way. And that, I think they must have been a side effect from the malaria tablets because we were obviously taking anti-malarials for this part of the trip. And that is a well-known side effect, to have sort of hallucinogenic dreams, which is really nice. I was absolutely fine. My dreams were, I dream. Well, I very rarely remember my dreams, but I was fine.
Right, when Emily goes to sleep. When you go to sleep at night, you power down like a laptop. You're like, oh, that's it.
I remain in the same position.
After an amazing and artery-clogging breakfast of fried bread and peanut butter, slices of fresh pineapple and green plantains, we felt ready to face the day. Until our 3 p.m. hatchery duty, the day consisted of nothing more than an excruciatingly cold rain shower. I mean, I would say it was quite cold, quite sort of refreshing, if excruciating.
Wow. You would take it a step down from excruciating.
Yeah, would a little. Oh dear. And then about 5 hours of sprawling in a hammock with a book. Due to a severe lack of reading material on Rachel's part, she was forced to succumb to the dangerous pursuit of dipping into the none other than the Twilight Saga from the box of discarded books in the shed. Station shed. The hours pass in a leisurely fashion. I really do. The hours passed in a leisurely fashion, only interspersed by casual conversation with a few of the other volunteers, Rachel, Abby and Archie, who were all fellow Brits. There was another girl called Rachel thrown into the mix. Right, so that shower, it was quite refreshing,
like
would you say?
You had a much nicer experience of it than I did. I've obviously gone down the really extreme route of calling it excruciatingly cold. I mean, it's just like any cold shower, really. Like anything that's like a bit colder than what you ideally would want is, you know, a bit
excruciating.
But I just thought, you know, why not pop in a little bit of extremeness to the blog and just take it right to its logical conclusion and call it excruciating. Yeah, no, I think you're right. It was refreshing. And you, obviously, this was your first taste of the Twilight Saga, as in book form, I imagine. So just to clarify this, so, you know, a lot of our time in Gandoka was downtime, let's be honest. And there was no there was a generator, but there wasn't like electricity just for people to use casually, and there was no internet connection or anything like that, so you had to kind of pass the time in the traditional methods, and there was like a big box full of books that had people like previous volunteers had left, and I think I for some reason had bought on the gap year as my reading material for 5 months. I remember I'd bought Sense and Sensibility, the Jane Austen classic, and I think I'd bought that because I think it was because I was about to embark on an English lit degree, and I thought, you know, better cram in some of the classics before it's too late. But I don't know why I thought that was like something that I would desperately want to be reading when I was like chilling in a hammock in the Costa Rican jungle. But anyway, you didn't. I don't think you'd bought any reading material, had you? So you were forced to select from the box, and you went for the Twilight Saga. What were your impressions?
That is quite unusual. First of all, why did I not bring anything to read? That is really quite unlike me. I love to have like a book, a Kindle on the go, especially around the beach. So I don't know what I was thinking. Clearly pillows were on my mind. But what I thought about Twilight, well, I thought it was awful before I'd even touched it. And then I read halfway through and I honestly couldn't finish it. I just found it just a load of drivel, just drivelling on and on. I remember thinking the girl was sort of cool, but there was just pages and pages of how beautiful Edward was. And if you watch YouTube clips of Robert Pattinson explaining his character, he hates him more than like the people hate the films. No one hates Twilight more than Robert Pattinson does. Yeah, so distasteful. And I felt like I proved that by not being able to get through it. Yeah, it's a bit more like sort of preteen erotica. It was very bizarre and I didn't like it. But Emily, you just continuously teased me that I had a crush on Edward. It got to the point where I actually had to have a stern word with you to stop. I was getting so embarrassed. Like, stop it. I don't.
Wow, how annoying of me. So sorry about that.
So, Emily, would you like to read the next half of the blog?
I would indeed. Okay, let's crack on. Soon after this, it was time for our very first hatchery duty, which involved 2 hours hard labour, sieving sand, digging holes, marking out areas and clearing the beach of general turtle birth hindering debris. After about 2 minutes of sieving, using a giant 1 metre long sieve that required 2 people to shove it back and forwards, my arms were pretty much on strike. The general upper body weakness that I so irritatingly possess caused me to soon be relegated to the much less strenuous job of emptying the sieve as it became full of shells, leaves, ancient fossils, historical artefacts, Coke cans and dead animals. Soon, though, the work was done and all volunteers, staff and locals cruised off on the 20-minute beach walk back to the station for a rice and bean dinner. I felt so crap like when we were doing that. So everyone was mucking in. Everyone was really like putting a shift in. Everyone was like, you know, it was very like, hi ho, hi ho. It was very like camaraderie was high. And I just felt like I was absolutely letting the side down because absolutely zero other people were having trouble with the tasks assigned. But because I just have like ludicrously weak arms, I don't know why, we've never looked into it. I just really struggled with this task because you had to like really like use your muscles to force this sieve back and forwards to like, I don't really know exactly what we were doing. Obviously that was unclear to me. I think we were just like, we were making the sand nice and pure, weren't we? So that the eggs could be buried in it. I think that was what we were doing. But yeah, it was very, very like, it was very arm heavy, and I just did not have the strength for it. Rachel, you were absolutely fine. I remember you were flying.
Do you?
Yeah, of course you were. Yeah, you were probably like, I can imagine your face of concentration. I can imagine. But yeah, there was a lovely community feel. You're quite right. I felt like this work had a real purpose to it, as you know, it kind of it echoed back to the work I was doing, the 6 jobs I was doing to get, you know, out there. And one of the jobs I hated the most was working in the freezer aisle in Sainsbury's and having to individually count what was on the freezing cold shelves with the little, like, I don't know, handheld scanner. And it took like 4 hours at a time. And that, I just remember thinking, I'm just so lost in meaning with this. But, you know, swaying a sieve back and forwards to help the lovely turtles that came up to the beach. You couldn't, yeah, there was no other feeling like it, really. It was very rewarding. Yeah. Do you remember? What job did you do then? When, bless you, it was again the different headspace is coming up. Oh, my arms! Oh, I'm feeling so rewarding. I hate that was my headspace, because obviously, like, I'm fully aware that we were like incredibly privileged and lucky to be doing this, but I just, you know, when you just simply, your body's like, no, sorry, this is beyond the call of duty, and I was just like, but we really, you know, like, it's for the turtles, guys, come on. But my arms were like,
they were so kind. They did give you something, something
really
different to do, which was still just as worthwhile. So I remember that. Absolutely. And then we all celebrated by playing football on the beach, which I really enjoyed. I don't like football, anything associated with it. Well, we were just having fun running around and what was it? Frisbee. It was one of those.
I think there were 2 separate occasions, one where we played frisbee, one where we played football, so who knows which one it was, but it was definitely one of the 2. But yeah, it was lovely actually. Everyone was really like, it was just really nice, wasn't it? It was just like, I don't want to go into like raptures about it, but it was just like, you know, there was all kind of like bits of modern life were stripped back, like there was no sort of distractions with phones and internet and blah blah blah, but it was just really nice for everyone to just be focused on what they were doing and interacting with each other. And obviously there was a bit of a language barrier because not everyone spoke the same language, but it was quite nice because you could all kind of find a common ground,
a common goal,
a common ground of sieving this bloody sand. But yeah, everyone was like laughing, and yeah, it was just a nice atmosphere. I think you're quite right. Yeah, a community feel was a good way to describe it. That night's patrol took a turn for the bizarre when Jairo and I were merrily strolling along, enjoying a highly one-sided Spanish conversation, when we stumbled across a tortuga. No sooner had I rummaged around in Jairo's spacious rucksack for the data log sheet than we were joined by about 30 American tourists, literally out of nowhere, crowding round with their flashlights, peering eagerly into the nest and into my face, and asking every question about turtle welfare under the sun. Most of these questions I had simply no hope of answering, and so I found myself fabricating some highly questionable answers that definitely would not have stood up to any scrutiny or internet research. After a while of this, I was growing concerned, mainly due to Jairo's constant sighing and jabbering into his walkie-talkie. It was at this point that I realised what was happening, took a stand, and feeling like a hefty fraud, I told the Americans to stand back, switch off their torches, and be silent as we needed to tend to the turtle. Very official. I have absolutely no idea in my brain where those American tourists could have possibly come from, because where we were was so in the middle of nowhere, wasn't it?
I think there was like another volunteer program that was more like a holiday come and see, more like tour, like maybe like a night tour. I think that's where they came from, because there were an onslaught of American tourists. We went on a couple of groups with them, but they were very enthusiastic about the program. But it did upset me a bit when they had their flashlights on, because turtles' eyes are so sensitive to light. That's why, as you know, signs in aquariums like don't use flash photography. And Emily, do you remember that time in Singapore, jumping forward, where I actually told someone off for using flash photography because it was really upsetting me. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, I remember that.
Long story short, just be wary about using light around the animals.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was like one of the main things we were told on day one, wasn't it? It was like turtles, like when it's dark, turtles' eyes are really sensitive to light. So we even had to wear really dark clothing, didn't we? Like we weren't like if someone came out.
Oh my gosh, that's so true. You had to. You couldn't.
No, if someone like turned up for patrol in like a white t-shirt or something, they were told to go and change. Like you absolutely just couldn't even do anything along those lines. And we used like infrared kind of torches, didn't we? Because that light wasn't as sensitive I think it was something like that. But anyway, you absolutely were not allowed to use torches. But there was like about 30 like searchlights, like
not only that, you
kind
weren't
of press
allowed.
conference for the turtle, like and I was like, oh my god, guys, please, this poor turtle.
You also weren't allowed to use mosquito spray because of it being too sensitive for their noses as well. So you were just getting bitten alive out there. But you did it for the turtles, which I fully understood.
We did it for the turtles. But yeah, I was also a bit worried about Gyro, because I think because he wasn't able to he didn't speak very good English, and I think he couldn't sort of communicate to the Americans like, please could you just step back, stop using flashlights, I think he was really like quite agitated by it, and so that's why I kind of felt, because it was just me and him at that point, and I was like, I kind of felt like it was up to me to like sort of take charge of this moment, even though I had absolutely zero turtle qualifications, had arrived there about 36 hours ago. I was just like, look guys, please, like some sort of Kardashian bodyguard, like step back please, the turtles are laying their eggs.
Why were they asking you? Why weren't they asking their own like tour person?
I don't remember there being a tour person.
Like, wasn't there a tour guide there that they could have asked? So they just literally rocked up on the beach and decided to have like 30 people stroll down the beach.
Well, I mean, that's what I've written here. Who knows how valid that is?
Poor you, 19-year-old girl that they're just pestering down. Oh,
yeah, I know. I had absolutely no answers to their questions. I was like, yes, turtles. Okay, I'll press on to the next bit. This is so we have one more paragraph of the blog to delve into. The next few days passed in much the same way, the only highlight being Joao, one of the staff members' purchase of a shiny new hammock, which he became highly protective of and would scream at anyone who should let their gaze fall anywhere near it. I also experienced the revelation of a lifetime on the subject of the sexy fashionista combo of socks and crocs. After previously swearing blind that I would never put my feet... socks and crocs. After previously swearing blind that I would never put my feet anywhere near a pair of Crocs as long as I live, I found myself on my third night patrol, not only wearing a bright blue pair that had been kindly lent out by other Rachel, who was heading back to San Jose for a few days before returning to Gandoka, but teamed with a pair of knee-high grey socks to complete the fashion fail wholeheartedly. I remember being eternally glad that flash photography on the patrol was strictly prohibited. Other than that, our lives for these few days have involved a hefty amount of rice, beans and poker. So I have highlighted here why I needed those socks, because I think this is a foreshadow of a severe misfortune that will befall me in a few days' time. But you had to... Basically, you needed to cover yourself up. I mean, it was hard, obviously, because as we just said, like, you had to wear dark clothing, and also you wanted to wear dark clothing that was like long trousers and long sleeve t-shirts, because there were so many bugs, and as Rachel pointed out, you couldn't use mosquito repellent. So really what you wanted to aim for was kind of like a sort of airtight container for your bod that was like dark colours so that no bugs...
Clammy bod.
Your clammy sandy bod. so that no bugs could enter. It was a bug-free zone. Obviously, ankles are a bit of a weak spot for this. And yeah, I think wearing the long socks was a really wise move. But yeah, Crocs, who knew? And they were just so comfy. They were such a comfy shoe to do patrol in. I mean, I don't know why.
Comfortable.
a long time.
I will be the longest advocate for Crocs being a great outdoor shoe for just kind of walking around like terrain. Not for any kind of fashion reasons at all.
Well, that's that blog, read and done and dusted. So we move on to the next segment. Rachel, who was the best person you met? And we've added this in as a little fun alternative, or your favourite memory with a person that is not me?
I think it was Archie. Archie was one of the fellow British volunteers that was with us before we got there. And Archie reminded me a lot of a friend I have back at home. He was sort of eccentric, lovable, and appreciated the more niche things that I love. So I'm still a child at heart. I really still like Pokemon at the age of nearly 30. Emily has absolutely no interest in it at all, completely indifferent. So it was good to have somebody there to chat to about that. So I appreciated our little, bonding sesh over that. And Archie was lovable and eccentric. He was a sweet guy. I enjoyed his company a lot. Good friend.
He was lovely. He was a lovely guy. And also anyone that shares your love of Pokemon is immediately like well and truly accepted into your heart and settled in.
They really are.
To another global franchise that I for some reason have severe dislike for, Twilight Pokemon, whatever it is.
Well, no, I'm not
opinions,
a fan
and I'll force them upon you.
I'm not much of a fan of the books anyway.
No, of course not.
What was your person? Oh, sorry, wait, I knocked the mic. And who was the best person you met / the favourite memory with a person that wasn't me?
Such a catchy title for a segment. I love it. So I think my favourite person, because obviously we met quite a lot of people during this time. I think Elias was a good meet because he was a fixture. Like, we spent quite a lot of time with him, and he did teach us to play no, he didn't teach you to play poker. I'm sure you were ready to.
No, I never knew how to. No, that was the first time I've ever played poker. Yeah, I never played it before.
Mistake.
But I just knew right. So just a bit of context. When Emily and I play cards, I've been playing cards with my family for a long time. I love a good card game. I still do. And when you shuffle the cards, if you're the dealer, you always deal to the left. That's the rule. And Emily would get the cards, shuffle them, and deal to the right. And it would just wind me up that I went, Emily, you deal to the left. And you were like, what is this, Casino Royale?
Or I think, other than Elias, probably Joao. I liked Joao. He was a nice man. He was like one of the sort of long-standing. I can't remember if he was staff or volunteer. I think he was probably staff.
Kind of a mixture
he was like
of
a bit,
both.
Yeah, he was a bit older. He was quite an avuncular figure, I would describe him as, and he was just a fun guy. But yeah, when he got that hammock and got so territorial about it, I was like, part of me was like jealous because I wanted that hammock, but part of me was like, fair enough, if I had that sweet hammock, I would be just as like livid of anyone trying to gain access to it. So I was like, I do understand.
Punch.
He was proud as Punch.
Yeah, he was. And it was brightly coloured like Punch as well. I got a bit frightened of it, really, of even like brushing past it accidentally.
Yeah, but it did shone. Accidentally. Oh my God, you were dead.
It was like a macaw amongst, birds that weren't as colourful.
Nice metaphor, yeah. The other hammocks were more sort of sparrow vibes, yeah. But Joao's was like a beautiful macaw soaring through the Amazon. I love that weird analogy.
Me too.
I think those were my peeps.
Oh, was that your chair? Do.
That was my chair, sorry.
Home podcasting at its finest. So
creaky old chair.
We're now on the segment of lessons that we have learnt. Emily, what was the lesson that you learnt?
Well, when we were doing our little bit of pre-prep for this podcast, we were going through the lessons we learned, and both of them are like fairly, minor. And then Rachel did point out that obviously we learned a lot about sea turtle welfare, as you'd hope. Although obviously not enough to like placate 30 information hungry American tourists, but we did learn a bit about like their nesting habits and why they need to be conserved and what the problems are with and why they're becoming endangered, and all this very, very useful information if you're embarking upon a volunteering project to conserve them. So obviously I learned a lot about that. But, something that stuck in my mind obviously more is that I learned that in very specific situations, Crocs can be a very good footwear choice. And, will I buy a pair of Crocs for myself? Unlikely. But I do enjoy the fact that you can buy those little accessories for them. I think that's a really clever... Yeah, it's like a very sneaky little marketing ploy. But... I haven't bought a pair in 11 years, so I think probably the ship has sailed. And also their environmental credentials have come out as not tip-top, so I don't think I'm going to go down that road. But they were very welcome for my feet during this brief amount of time I was allowed to borrow them. And I was really like, God, I wish I had a pair of these for night patrol.
I'm sure some of our listeners as well
team,
who may have owned a pair or tried a pair know what we're talking about.
I absolutely, it's fair enough. Like if you love your Crocs, I hear you. Anyway, Rachel, what's your lesson that you learned?
back to what we're doing. Back to
the actual podcast.
what my lesson was. I didn't learn. I only confirmed. I knew Twilight was awful before I read it, and it's still awful after I read it. But in saying that, it didn't stop me from watching and rewatching all 4 movies this year on Netflix. They do have a certain entertainment value. It's sort of batshit cray. The idea that this sort of werewolf man falls in love with a fetus from a vampire's womb is beyond comprehensible.
There's a lot to unpack, isn't there, really?
It is, and I would hugely recommend watching Ryan George's video on YouTube about it, Pitch Meeting Twilight. It's very funny, and it really resonates with my feelings on the whole franchise. I honestly could do a whole podcast episode on the flaws of that, but no one needs to hear that. So that was my lesson, and obviously learning more about how turtles, the turtle environment, and how to keep it nice and clean and accessible to them for their babies.
Yeah.
Why is that a side note? Why is that not as important?
I don't know why it's a side note. It really is much more important.
It really is. It really is.
Obviously, I don't know how much I've retained. I will say that. I don't know how much I could go into paragraphs about turtle welfare 11 years on. But I'm sure it would all come back to me if I just did a quick Google.
Yeah, we've got the experience. We've got the experience.
Oh yeah, we're fully qualified. Absolutely qualified. If anyone's got any turtles that need saving, conserving, give us a ring. We'll be there in a jiffy.
Don't. Emily doesn't mean this at all. She doesn't know what she's saying.
No, I don't. I really don't. Obviously, we are far, far from experts. We were just 2 little children that did a 2-week volunteering project. It was when we were sitting there scrolling around wondering what to do, and it was the picture of that turtle and Emily, I have to do this. I feel like it came from me and you were like, I love this. Come from you. Okay, that's fun. Yeah, it did come from you. I think both of us wanted to do some sort of animal conservation project.
We did, and we went for turtles.
Yeah,
I now have one tattooed on my ankle, which is
of course you do.
Oh my gosh,
yes.
I do. And my partner said it looks like a poker ball with legs. Someone said it looked like a tennis ball with legs. It looks like the size of a 5p
Who are
coin.
these harsh critics of your tattoo that you're associating with? I'd just tell them to fuck off. Well, I mean, one of them is your fiance, so not so easy there. But I would just be like, can you just get away from my tattoo?
Just leave it alone.
It's on me forever, so any criticism will be taken to heart.
Yeah, exactly.
We did get those tattoos together. I didn't get a turtle though, I got an elephant, off message, but I also have a tattoo of a stick man, so I'm really no authority on the subject.
I was thinking about your stick man tattoo the other day, and forgotten completely.
If only I'd thought about it more before I got it.
You named it as well on the trip, didn't you? You named the stick
I did,
man.
yes.
What was it
I
called?
did. I named it after someone who we met on the trip, who obviously
we won't spoil it. Can we won't spoil it then. We'll get to that.
That is a
when
real incentive to keep listening if ever I heard one.
But Emily, didn't you also like make little outfits for it? Wasn't it me that was like, get a pen and you can just draw little outfits and we'll take pictures with Stickman?
Yeah, and we used to play hangman with it. Yeah, in hostels. Yeah. It was a real talking point. A hot topic for everyone.
Oh my gosh.
God, what an absolute maniac I was.
Wait, didn't you get that tattoo because you were like, I'll get a Stickman tattoo when I turn 18, and someone went, no you won't, and you were like, yes I will, and pretty much that same
Rachel,
day.
that's the exact
you went
story.
out of school, got yourself into tattoo parlour.
I know. Literally pretended I had, like, this is how lame it was. Literally pretended I had a dentist appointment to get out of my last my last lesson of the day, which was art, ironically. I was like, yeah, I have to go to the dentist. And my teacher was like, okay, do you have like written permission? I was like, yeah, here you go. Like forged signature from my mum. Absolutely ludicrous. It was 2 days after my 18th birthday. Someone should have intervened. Absolutely. Someone should have intervened. It should never have happened. And then I spent like a good 3 months after getting it frantically Googling tattoo removal.
Emily, didn't you go with 2 friends as well?
Yeah, I did, but I think that, like, if, you know, obviously this is a very narcissistic thing to say, but if anyone wants to understand my personality, I think that sequence of events is perfect. Like, going from, like, I'll get a fucking permanent tattoo to prove a point, to, oh God, what have I done? Google it, anxiety dreams for months afterwards. I think that's just a perfect synopsis of me.
Whereas my tattoo took about 3 years to dedicate myself to
you
it.
thought about it long and hard. But I love your tattoo. I think it's really great.
Thanks. I love your tattoos too. Your lion elephant, your stick man.
Thank you.
And do you have one more? Is it just the 2?
No, like just the 2. I was like, you know, why try and improve on perfection?
It's just the 2.
Just the 2.
Oh my
ridiculous. God. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of another episode of the Gap Year Diaries podcast. Please, oh please do bounce over to our Instagram page, and I think what you will find there is some actual visual representations. Well, not representations, pictures, photographs of what we talk about on the podcast. So it's quite fun to see. Obviously, follow the podcast wherever you get your podcast from. And if you really are having a day where you're just like full of generosity and it's flowing out of you, give us a little 5-star review. Yes, so next week's episode, we're still in Gandoka, still saving the turtles, but we attend our very first party of the trip, a very first piece of nightlife.
We're going to a party.
So that's to look forward to next week, so hopefully we'll see you there.
Yay! See you there, listeners. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you.
Thank
and look forward to seeing. We can't see or hear you.
Seeing, feeling you.
Oh, God.
Sensing your presence next week.
Thanks. Okay.
Bye.
Emily, bye. Bye, listeners. Bye all. Bye.